Plato said, "Do not honor man above truth." Yet we do so every day as contemporary society is shaped by outdated beliefs that influence how we think. To solve this problem, we need to rethink our held beliefs and values. First, I'd like to take you way back, to the time of the philosopher Plato. He lived in ancient Greece over 2,000 years ago, and during this time, he wrote an insightful allegory, which is a story with a hidden or symbolic meaning. The main lesson of Plato's allegory is, unbelievably, still relevant today. Plato's allegory of the cave may sound a bit intimidating, but in reality, the concept is quite simple. Picture a dark cave in which a group of prisoners are chained, facing the cave wall. Their viewpoints are limited solely to the wall in front of them. Behind them is a fire, which allows puppeteers to cast shadows on the walls of the cave. The prisoners believe that reality is what they see on the walls in front of them. Unknowingly, they lived a stunted existence. Outside of the cave is the actual reality, which the prisoners are unable to observe. So, what can Plato's allegory teach us? It speaks to the idea of ignorance perpetuated by unquestioned forces. It shows us how ignorance can obscure truth. Although they did not know it, the prisoners within the cave had the ability to leave. They had the ability to step out and into the sun. If they had done so, their worldview would have been shifted, their perspective altered, their entire idea of reality would have been immediately transformed. So, how is it even possible that a 2,000-year-old philosophical concept like the allegory of the cave continues to resonate even today? Well, in a way, the prisoners in the allegory are actually just like us. They represent our current need to rethink our held beliefs and values. As a recent example of a necessary shift in thinking, let's consider our collective enlightenment in regard to a figure who was previously considered to be a pillar of society. Egerton Ryerson. He was glorified for decades. There was even formerly a university named after him. However, Ryerson helped to create and implement the residential school system, the devastating effects of which decimated Indigenous culture and communities. As a society, we've made a conscious decision to reevaluate the existing opinions that held this individual in high standing. We, like the prisoners within the cave, have looked away from the projected image and instead turned into the light. We've realized that his actions were immensely damaging. We've cast him down from his metaphorical pedestal, and we've set about making reparations. However, the fact that we only recently confronted the deep discrepancy between Ryerson's enduring legacy and contemporary views clearly demonstrates society's dire need to rethink its held beliefs. It leaves us with a myriad of questions, wondering if other such discrepancies exist, and asking, how can we leave the cave? This brings us to our problem: the perpetuation of antiquated beliefs, specifically those that create inequity. If we choose not to reevaluate our held beliefs, we choose to remain within the metaphorical cave. Our solution to this is that reevaluation of traditionally accepted beliefs. This must occur in two contexts. We need to rethink our worldview and the status quo. This will allow us to step out and into the metaphorical sun. Analysis of the status quo and our worldview can bring antiquated beliefs and inequitable discriminatory systems to light. So, what will this yield? Successfully challenging our held beliefs on both a personal and societal level will lead to several positive results. Not only will it decrease polarization in the present, but it will also create more open-minded societies and serve to strengthen our communities. The problem that we face is clear. We unconsciously hold damaging beliefs and views. In Plato's allegory, these are represented by the shadows on the walls of the cave that are shaped by the puppeteers behind them. For us, there are two shadow casters, two factors that shape our held beliefs. They are the status quo, which impacts our perceptions on a societal level, and our individual worldview and biases, which influence our perceptions on a personal level. These factors are able to influence our lives in a wide variety of ways. They impact our interactions with each other and our contributions to society. An individual's worldview is shaped by a variety of factors, like your upbringing and one's lived experiences. These influences, which are unique to each person, then take the form of implicit bias. On the other hand, the status quo is defined as the current state of things, and it establishes a baseline in terms of perceptions. Have any of you ever been told that, hey, that's just the way things are? Yeah, that's the status quo. It's that societally held, deeply ingrained, unquestioned opinion that's able to perpetuate antiquated ideas, like those glorifying certain historical figures, with ease. Our worldview and the status quo shape our beliefs. They act as our shadow casters, creating the images that we see. If we want to step out of the cave and into the sun, we cannot allow these ideas to continue unquestioned. So how do we even begin to confront antiquated beliefs, particularly when they are so deeply ingrained? The answer is that conscious reevaluation of existing beliefs and values, which will allow us to step out and into the metaphorical sun. Leaving the cave and the restrictive viewpoint of the prisoner behind will require effort from the individual in two contexts. We need to rethink the two factors that act as shadow casters, our worldview and the status quo. To confront the status quo, we need to begin by determining what societal lenses are corrupted, in need of remediation to become representative of society's views, or supportive of an inequitable concentration of power. We must also be aware of the fact that all members of society are subject to cultural conditioning. This occurs in all contexts, in media, in schools, and in the workplace. As an influential example of this, consider the educational literary canon. Have any of you ever read The Catcher in the Rye, 1984, The Great Gatsby, or Romeo and Juliet? For a lot of you, this is likely conjuring up images of grade 10 English class, and rightfully so. A 2012 study showed that these were the books most commonly taught in high school. And don't get me wrong, each of these texts have their own merits. However, upon further examination, it's difficult to deny that this specific selection of resources is representative of an imbalance of power. It clearly lacks diverse perspectives. We can identify similar problems and then advocate for reform, promoting exposure to a wider variety of messaging and media. In this way, we can expand our societal horizons and encourage an understanding of diverse perspectives, ultimately making all of us more accepting. In addition, we must also work to confront our own individual worldview and our personal narrative. Our ability to adjust our held beliefs and critically analyze our personal narrative is highly influential. It shapes how we view and treat others. It determines what practices and actions we consider to be acceptable. It dictates what injustices we may allow to pass by. In order to effectively reevaluate our worldview, we must examine the perspectives that we consider and work to identify and eliminate any implicit biases that we may hold. Statistically, we are all more likely to socialize and interact with people that are similar to us or that share certain qualities. This stems from one type of implicit bias called confirmation bias, which is the tendency to search for and favor information that supports your existing preconceptions. This relates to socialization, as if you believe that the qualities that you hold are good or positive or inherently right, as many of us do, then you'll naturally seek out people that share them. However, this manifests as a sort of unconsciously selective socialization. Basically, we seriously limit the perspectives that we hear from. Through examination of the members of our social circles, we can determine what implicit biases we may hold and work to ensure that we are considering a wide variety of diverse perspectives. After realizing the extent to which we engage predominantly with one social group, we can choose to better cultivate our engagements. Of course, this method of rethinking is not solely applicable to socialization. It can be applied to many aspects of your life, like media and content consumption. If you realize that the content that you're consuming lacks diverse perspectives, you can make that conscious decision to expand your horizons and consume a wider variety of media. As an example, if you find that you only get your news from one outlet, you can choose to look at a different one to gain a new, different perspective. So by examining our worldview and implicit biases, we can gain a better understanding of the factors that shape our interactions with each other and with society. In this way, we can truly step out and into the sun. So what will this type of re-examination ultimately yield? The result, of course, will be that escape from the cave, which brings with it increased open-mindedness and decreased polarization as a result of greater consideration of others' viewpoints. Collaboration and more meaningful interpersonal relationships. Unity and stronger, connected, more empowered communities. The goal of this exercise is the prevention of a dramatic and worrying discrepancy between the reality of our inherent equality and the organization of society that puts some individuals on a pedestal above others. Through reevaluation of the status quo and examination of our own worldview and biases, we can cast down the held beliefs that perpetuate inequitable ideas and imbalances of power. This exercise, which will result in increased open-mindedness, will not only benefit society in the present and the future, but it is also both morally right and urgently necessary. The benefits of choosing to step out of the cave of antiquated ideas and into the sun of open-mindedness are undeniable. Each and every single one of us has the power, the ability to snap our metaphorical chains and step out into the sun. We can choose to change. We can choose to create a society that used to be dominated by polarization and inequality and turn it into one centered around community, empowerment, engagement. In the words of Tolstoy, there can only be one permanent revolution, a moral one, the regeneration of inner man. This is what we must go through, as we must choose to step into the sun. We must choose to leave the cave. Thank you.